Hello and welcome. I am Kim Fuller, and you are tuning into an edition of Change is Personal on the Amazing Women of Power Positive Programming Network. And it's powered by Raven International. Well, Change is Personal is where you can learn how to go from feeling overwhelmed to empowered. And each week, you will hear stories, information, and examples of how someone has gone from tragedy to triumph or discouraged to inspired, either through my own stories, guest experts, authors, or even other coaches. My goal is to provide you with ideas, strategies that will help you on your journey of change. Each journey is personal to your own situation. I will give you homework, exercises, and takeaways, or even next action steps to help you move through this process. I believe that we are all capable of making changes in our lives. I believe that our decision to make changes is personal. And I believe that we each choose our own path and process to go from feeling overwhelmed to empowered. If you find yourself one of those people who just resist change, you avoid it, you get frustrated with the process, or feel like a failure when you're just not successful, and you find yourself comparing your progress to, say, infomercials or your neighbors or colleagues, and just find yourself feeling more and more discouraged, I want this show to be of use to you. I want you to be successful in your change process. So you can connect with me if you just need additional support or encouragement, or if you want feedback and just acknowledgement of your change process and just how difficult it can be. Send me an email, kim@fullerlifeconcepts.com, or call me 323-336-2294. The topic today, your body is talking. Are you listening? Some of the pain and overwhelm that we experience has a significant impact on our bodies. Both physical and emotional well-being are impacted. And there are many examples of studies, research outcomes that emphasize how our bodies react under stress, and the results can be depression, anxiety, psychosis, as well as physical, like illnesses, pain, disease, or even immobility. How do these problems manifest themselves in our lives, and are there any steps that we could take to make changes today? So my guest is Dr. Ward. He's a chiropractor. Dr. Ward is the developer of Mind, Body, Spine Transformation. He has been in practice in Long Beach, California for 24 years. Dr. Ward has developed a spinal blueprint which he's used to research disease conditions such as fibromyalgia, cancer, depression, and neuromuscular diseases. His life-changing work was featured on The Today Show, Channel 9 Best Deals, and the Montel Williams Make-A-Wish Show. Dr. Ward uses different ways to adjust people than typical. He uses a standing and a sitting wall adjustment technique to reduce the pain throughout the body, which is different from other chiropractors who typically use a laying down or prone position. He has developed an extensive suite of positive intention software guaranteed to inspire people of all ages. His website is chiroman.com and powerofpositivecomputing.com. He believes that pain directly relates to hurt that has been denied. He will discuss human behavior and its correlation to spine and pain. So welcome, Dr. Ward, to Change is Personal.
Well, it's really wonderful to be here with you today.
Oh, I'm glad to have you. So I wanted to get started with, how did you just get involved with connecting spine health with human behavior?
Well, I am a second-generation chiropractor, and my father, Lowell Ward, really started out in 1960, and his whole approach was to try to objectively document the results he was getting with his chiropractic care. So he began a process which he termed spinal column stressology, and he used a process of full spine x-rays from the front and side view in both the standing and seated positions. He then marked about 50 measurements, and that's how he would measure his results with the chiropractic care that he was giving at the time. He started with me, and this is a picture of me as a baby on the right, and I was born 2.5 months early. They gave me 1 in 1,000th chance of survival, and I was in a hospital incubator for 12 days in critical condition. And my dad was actually adjusting me when I was in the incubator, and the doctors afterwards, they didn't know he was adjusting me, but the doctors then said, wow, we think your son might make it. And they didn't quite understand that. And then at age 6, I was put in a full body cast, and I was told I'd never walk again. And I spent 10 months in a full body cast, and then for the next a little over a year, so it was almost 2 years that I didn't walk at all. And that's when my dad discovered the functional short leg deficiency. And in at that time in my life, I had a 2-inch right short leg. So he chose to put a 2-inch heel lift on the outside of my shoe, and immediately I went from being able to walk a few seconds a day to 15 minutes, and then within a couple weeks I could walk an hour, and a couple weeks later I was breaking through, and about a month after that I was back to health. So I owe so much to my dad for his breakthrough thinking, the willingness to take a challenging case and try his best to make a difference. And so I'm very thankful and grateful that I had an amazing father like I had. So that's how I ended up getting started with chiropractic, and it was great.
So, okay, so there's one technical thing I want to mention, that I don't have your slide on full screen.
Oh, okay. I didn't put it there, so there you go. It's on full screen.
Okay, and so how does, are there specific classifications of spinal problems? And are there some problems that we just in general are born with?
Sure. Most people are going to be in various curvature patterns. They can be in a forward curve, a backward curve, a left or a right curve, and most everybody on the planet has different levels of curvature. And so, but then there's other issues. I feel that the mental, emotional issues, the patterns of behaviors that we have in our life are really issues that really are present from the moment of conception. So I do believe that our human behavioral patterns that run our life are really present from the moment of conception.
Okay, so basically there are 4 different patterns: forward, backward, left, and right.
Yes.
And the way that our body is curved based on one of these curvature patterns is predetermined by prenatally? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. There's so many things that go into creating your overall psychogenetic pattern. But yes, if you study identical twins that are separated at birth and come back together, say 45, 50 years after separation, what you find is they have named their kids the same names, they have the same jobs, they have the same behaviors, they read books from the back to the front, they yell on elevators, they do all sorts of interesting things, which really goes to what we're saying is that our patterns of behavior are passed to us generationally, and they take place so early on in our life that we think that every behavior that we are experiencing is ours, but in true reality, these experiences are commonly passed down from a prior generation, from a current generation, and it's passed down as a behavioral script, and we're actually seeing our life through someone else's eyes.
Phew, that sounds like, that makes me feel, I think, a little bit overwhelmed with thinking that, or even maybe confused with thinking that my behavior is a result of patterns that have been passed down generationally, and that what you're saying is based on the way my spine curves, you can tell me the behavior that's associated with my spinal curvature.
Yes, I can.
Wow.
If you would like, I'll show you an example of the curvature patterns. I'm going through some segmental views. Really, our approach is we can look at the body as a system, or we can look at the body as a bag of bones. And so this illustration really is an example of the dichotomy between what the medical model is doing, looking at local pathology, and what we're doing, which is saying we are more than the sum of our parts. If we're going to truly understand anything, a mental disorder, a physical disorder, a local problem, say like a disc herniation, we must see it in its totality to fully understand the severity. So this slide just is really an example of look at the part or look at the whole. And whereas this picture is a severe backward spinal curvature pattern, and this is what we see often when people toe out and lock their knees. It's likely that they're leaning backward in a curvature. From a pattern of behavior, it means that they take hurt internally, they withdraw from that hurt, and they put the hurt into denial. From a deeper rooted issue, it deals with the father withdrawal in the family, and in this example, it's so severe backward, 17.9 centimeters away from normal. It's a huge displacement. And this would indicate generation after generation of father abandonment issues.
And you came to that conclusion just looking at or measuring the amount of backward curvature in the spine?
Yes. Over the course of over 50 years, we've been able to make many correlations based on structure. And so when we see this curvature, we know that there's withdrawal of the male parent. We know that it's likely that the male parent sources will have heart issues, because when we see a backward curve, they're withdrawing from their heart, they're withdrawing from their hurt. And of course, we feel that that's not a healthy thing to do. If we're hurt, we should feel it. If we don't feel it, we set up patterns, and once we set up this denial pattern, we go through our whole life never feeling the hurt that we feel.
Okay, so here's another thought that I'm having. So if a lot of times we numb or we mask our pain, and basically what you're saying is we hold our bodies in such a way that emulates that numbing or that masking of the pain. Thus, our spine is, curved to one direction or the other.
Correct. Okay. That is very correct. And then there are always specifics, because as a result of doing this work for over 50 years, we've been able to really study so many different processes. And when you really learn something, it's when you begin on a process. Like in my case, I was working with Duchenne muscular dystrophy children. And when I took on the first child, I didn't know a whole lot. But by the time I took on the second child, we saw a pattern. By the time I took on 15 children, we saw the pattern over and over and over. And okay, in that disease, they do have backward curvature patterns, which references the withdrawal of the male parent. And over the 20 years of me working with the kids, I can count on one hand the times that the father came to the office with their child who's been diagnosed with Duchenne. It was almost always the mother. So the father was in a withdrawal from the family. And so what we would see is this second curve that's on the screen, which is, this is an example of a forward curvature of the spine. And so we're seeing that in this example that the spine is 4 or 5 inches forward to normal in the neck. And in the upper back, you see the whiteness in the upper back area. That's the trapezius muscle that's going into spasm to support the head that's forward to normal. And then we come down and we see in the lower back curve that the lumbar curve is reversing from normal. The midpoint of the X that you see in the lower back region should be on the line going up the middle. And so this is an example of what you'll see with any person suffering from lower back pain. Their lumbar curve is reversing. Well, the pattern of behavior is this person was taught how to internalize hurt, not express hurt. And so that is a precursor to every cancer profile on the planet. Is in 99% of the cases, you will find this reversal of the lumbar curve, which means they're having challenges expressing hurt when they get hurt. And so when they are taught to internalize and deny their hurt, there's going to be other dysfunctions that come forward. Early on, it might be a lower back problem. Later on, it might be a cancer profile.
Right. And then all the other organs that are impacted by the fact that your spine is out of alignment begin to have symptoms as well, correct?
That's correct, and that would get into what's happening actually with the spinal cord. Is the spinal cord overstretching, which would get into the spinal cord stretching, and every exiting nerve at its exit point is also stretching, or is the spinal cord compressing, which would mean that every exiting nerve is slackening, and in both examples, that will impinge the nerve supply, and when the nerve supply is cut off, you're going to impact the organ, the muscle, the tissues. Everything will be impacted by that curvature and cord issue.
Okay, so far you've told us about the backward curvature, which is the withdrawal results in heart problems, the forward, which is internalizing hurt and could lead to cancer diagnoses. What about the left and the right?
Well, let me just say one other thing about the forward curve. This is what you're going to see in when the mother is more driven. And so say the father's absent, so we'll see the backward curve, and then we'll see the forward curve present, which means the mother is taking on that role of both being father and mother, maybe working, running the family, and doing 100 million other things. And so this curvature is very exhausted in nature. So when we see people going forward, we know that their body is in a state of exhaustion. It's in a breakdown, and that means it's an immune compromised condition. And you mentioned the left and right curve. Here is an example of how dramatic a curvature can change from one position to the next. The picture on the left is the child standing. The picture on the right is the child sitting. So if we study only one position, what we're doing is we're not able to truly understand the severity of the problem at all, and the medical model, as a rule, only looks at the part. So if you have lower back pain, they only look at the lower back instead of looking at what's going on in the lower back relative to the rest of the body, above it and below it. But this is an extreme example of how curvature can change dramatically in one person, 2 minutes difference in time. And so this is why studying people standing and sitting is vital to truly understand the severity of the problem that is taking place.
And that's because in this slide, when the child is standing, it looks like there's a backward curvature, but when the child is sitting, it looks like a forward curvature.
Right. It's an extreme backward curvature.
Yeah.
In fact, at the bottom of the spine is the sacral base angle, and that angle should be 45 degrees, and in this example, that measurement is 85 degrees, which is causing the lower back curve to go really far forward, and then the body is counterbalancing, and that's why you see the extreme backward curve in the neck and mid-back. And this child is the product of a very severe trauma his mother was actually raped, and the rapist was the birth father. So
Okay.
this is a kind of dysfunction that can show up when you see case after case. You see these severe curvatures, and the normal person doesn't have this, but I wanted to show an example of an extreme
Right.
example.
Okay. Wow, that is very extreme, and it's like makes you sit and want to look at people differently.
Absolutely. And the one on the right is what you're going to see with every child, adult who has attention deficit disorder. You're going to see the forward curvature of the spine. And you're going to understand that the spinal cord is going to attempt to stretch, and when it fails to stretch, it's going to compress the brain like a sponge. And when we compress the brain, we depress the brain, and that's also the curvature that you're going to find with depression. So that's just going into this issue of the brain is being squeezed.
Oh, yes. Okay. I got it. That makes sense. So what about the left or the right curvature?
The left here is a mild example of a left curvature, and what we know to be the case is when we find a person in a left curvature, that indicates that they're looking for outside male approval. Now, the problem with that is that people think that approval is relative to what they do, and the more they do, the more likely they'll get approval. But in truth, approval is relative to, are we seeking approval from a person who has learned to self-approve, or are we seeking approval from a person who has never self-approved? And so in this example, this female patient is seeking father approval, but the father never approved of self, so cannot validate, encourage, and approve of his daughter. And also in this example, the father wanted a boy and got a girl, so the girl then is more male dominant, they're strong. When they get hurt, they don't want you to know it. When they have a need, they have difficulty sharing it. And the world is really we're seeing so many women today with left curve because of the multitask nature that women are doing today. They're running their house, they're running corporations, they're wives. They have multiple pulls on them. And of course, this pattern says that this person would be mentally strong and they would be out of touch with their physical body. So when they're tired, they say, oh, I have too much to do to be tired. When they're sick, oh, I can't afford to be sick. So it's always a rationalization of logic that pushes them through it, and that can be a challenge. But if you don't address the issue, then you can see this. And this would be a far more severe example of a left curvature.
So what kind of, I'm chuckling because some of the symptoms or reactions that you're saying resonate with me. The whole, when I have so many things to do, I don't have time to be tired. You can even probably find quotes of me anywhere saying, I don't have time to be sick. I have A, B, and C, and D due. I need to go, move. So it's just funny. So we'll get back to me in a moment. So
Right.
what kind of conditions happen with the left curved spine?
Well, on a female, you're going to find left curvature on breast cancer, uterine cancer, cervical cancer. You're going to almost always find a left curvature. So anyone who's been diagnosed with a gender cancer, it is vital, and I mean vital, that they are embedding love commands to their gender. So if you ask them, a lot of times they will be backward in curve and left in curve prior to the cancer. And so, but if you ask them something as simple as what is your purpose, in many examples they will say they don't know. And so then when you see this significant left curve, then you understand they're out of alignment with their power because they're seeking this unreal expectation that this parent should know how to love them. Well, if our purpose isn't a purpose of self-love, self-validation, self-encouragement, and self-approval, then we're seeking it from outside sources. And in most cases, we're seeking it codependently, which is love based on the word if, which is a fear-based love, not an independent love. So what happens, to answer your question, is we see this pattern in gender cancers in women. We see this pattern in fibromyalgia. Such a huge issue with women today is the fibromyalgia dynamic that they're facing, and that comes from years and years and years of pushing through fatigue. That means that they haven't listened to their body, that they started stealing from stored energy reserves. They started depleting their energy reserves, and then all of a sudden they're in chronic fatigue. Then they're in fibromyalgia because this is basically a denial profile. And so if I deny my hurt, I will have pain, and I will have it on the left. If it's a female, she'll have it on the left side of her body. So if she's having left shoulder blade pain, left hip pain, left knee pain, those are all signs of needing something from a male that is unable to give it. And then the female thinks, oh, I'm not getting it, so I haven't done enough, so if I do more, I'll get more. And all they do is deplete themselves more.
Got it. Yikes.
Yeah.
I guess yikes isn't very professional, but that's the first thing that I thought of.
Well, that's the first thing I said when I came into this work was yikes. I had no idea that the body could do the things that the body does, and it does it from case to case. And the picture on the screen is very unique in the sense that this is a six-born female where the father wanted boys and got 6 girls.
Oh, wow.
So at the point of number 6, the father's like practically threatening the doctor to make sure that this child's going to be a male. And so all these ladies are going through their life feeling inadequate, that they weren't the male that their father wanted. And then that sets them up to be overdriven, to maybe choose a job that's male dominant because of this need for outside male approval. And so that's why I'm very big on, we need to give ourselves approval. We need to come from validation for self. We need to encourage self and realize that loving self is loving ourself at our worst as well as our best, our lowest as well as our highest. And if we cannot come into that love process with self, then we will look for it outside of self, but we'll only get conditional love, not independent love.
Okay. And so what about, wow. Okay. So what about the right?
I just noticed I didn't have a right curvature, but just imagine this curve going to the right. With the right curvature, what we're hearing in our message, and you have a lot of this too, because there's some strong women in your dynamic mother, grandmother, whoever, but the right curve is we hear the message, if you do something, do it right. Right means perfect. Perfect means flawless or without flaw. And when I go on my journey to attain it, what I do is instead of celebrating my greatness, I set a higher level of expectation. So you hear it as, oh, I gave my best. How can I improve? Oh, yeah. And when you deal with that model, you get to the end of your life and you feel as if you haven't attained anything, when in fact you have attained incredible things. But this issue is disguised through, it's a generational inadequacy issue. And so when it comes in generationally from a parent, the parent then disguises their feeling of inadequacy through an expectation. And so we hear it from the parent is, if you do something, do it right. And then we think, okay, if I do it well, I'll get what I need, which is the parental validation. Then I go, hey, Mom, I got an A. Well, why didn't you get an A+?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Right? And these patterns are present in our athletes today. And so many people are setting these unreal expectations, and so nothing they ever do is enough, and that is, to me, a great misdirection. So how would I help someone who has that issue? I would say change your language. Say, I always give my best. look at the intention. My intention is to give my best. And then follow it up with my best is enough. Now, that doesn't mean my best is enough for people outside of me, but my best needs to be enough for me. And the minute I go outside, it becomes a far more difficult dynamic. So this is an animation just showing both the left and right curvature.
Right.
And showing, okay, so this person saying, man, I need approval from both male and female. Male parent, male peer, female peer. Well, wow, what a problem that is.
Yes.
Because we better start and make sure we can say, oh, I know this person has approved of self. So they have the possibility within them to approve of me. But we shouldn't need it. And if we do need it, that's when we really misdirect this process and we make our problem so much more significant. So here it's just an example of a curve going left and right. And then here it's an example of what that curve actually looks like when you spin it in 3 dimensions. So that's the power of 3D modeling, is it just really gives you the ability to understand. In this example, this is what you'll see in any woman with osteoporosis. So as you can see, if we take this back and look at it frame by frame, we see the normal spine. And then what we see is, as time goes by, we see the curves increasing, we see the height decreasing.
Right.
Okay, which is what you're going to see in osteoporosis. So osteoporosis is also an issue of over-pushing, overusing energy, and then having to pull from the bone for energy. And so it's very important that we understand that there is a pattern to everything. So what do we want to coach people to do? We want them to look at their life and ask themselves this one question: how can I do this and save energy? That is so powerful. And because if we can't find ways to save energy, then what we do is overuse energy. And when we overuse energy, we get sick.
Okay, so what do you mean by save energy? What would that look like?
Well, it would look like we touched on the issue of approval.
Right.
And we touched on how big of a misdirection that can be. Well, I save energy when I self-approve. I save energy when I self-love. I save energy when I self-validate. I save energy when I self-encourage. I use energy when I look for outside approval. I use energy when I look for outside validation, for outside love and outside encouragement. See, we want to call people in that are authentic in love, not in a fear-based love. So that's one way. But saving energy would be like holding your head up instead of reading with your head down. Or, I might have someone wear a soft cervical collar when they sleep on their side to pull them out of the fetal sleeping pattern, because that's very damaging. You go to bed, you want your 8 hours of sleep, and you sleep in a fetal position, which means you're getting about 5 because you're sleeping in a stress load that's actually not allowing your body to rest. See, anytime you drop your head, your body has to overwork to stabilize that head that's being dropped. And that's why so many people suffer from upper back muscle spasms and pain in the neck. It's because their head's being dropped when they sit, it's being dropped when they sleep, and a lot of times you even see people dropping their head when they stand. And that's the most significant pattern. Now, just to touch base, because I want to show this animation would be an animation that we would see in fibromyalgia and breast cancer, uterine cancer, and cervical cancer prior to the cancer. So we're going to see a normal spine, the spine should be straight. But in this example, the spine's deviating left and backward.
Got it.
Okay, so when we see that, we say, okay, well, what's their need? Well, their fathers withdrew from them, and they're injured. They question gender, thinking if they were a boy, their father wouldn't have withdrawn from them. And now they're seeking approval from a female-dominant male, and that female-dominant male has an abandonment issue of the father and a dominant mother, so they can't give the approval to this person. And so and then if we spin this, you can really see
Oh
the
my.
disorder in that
Right.
structure. So that's just an example of fibromyalgia, whereas the next example would be an example of what you would see with a male in prostate cancer. So in prostate cancer, you're going to see the backward curve, meaning the withdrawal of the parent, and you're going to see the need for female parent approval. But so many times that female parent is in a gender issue, and she can't give the approval because she has never learned to approve of self.
Oh, so that's a backward right curvature for a man.
Correct.
So what is the biggest health challenge that women are facing today? Would you say that would be the fibromyalgia and the cancers, or is there others?
To me, the biggest health challenge that women are facing today is not being conscious of their energy. And what they are doing is, because they're so mentally strong, they're just blowing off their body. They're not listening to it. They're not taking the time to allow their energy to be replenished. They're not finding ways to save their energy. And so to me, everything goes back to energy. Either we're efficient with our energy or we're inefficient with our energy. Meaning, if I'm a doctor and my need is to save my patient, then already I'm using energy. Because my job as a doctor is to empower my patient, not to save them. To empower them, to help them to see they're their best doctor, not me. And that when given some new choices, they can transform their life. And to me, that's what power is all about. And
Right.
so it's about just learning to save energy. Do you really need someone's approval? Do you really need someone's love? Do you really need their validation? Because to my belief is that although I like it, I do not need it. And I'm not going to fall apart when it's withheld. And I'm certainly not going to fall apart when I see that the person who's withholding it cannot give it to themselves. And to
Oh,
me, that's a breakthrough in reframing the mind so that we can really have the victory in our life that we want to have and get to the end of our life without being broken down.
right. So that definitely relates to the show Change is Personal, because one of the major points that I always try to convey in any of the shows is the fact that, one, change is personal, but also that we have an opportunity to make a decision as to whether or not we're going to improve our lives and become more empowered. And I also talk through a process I call the ABCDs, where A is awareness. Just become aware of the fact that there is a problem and that you want to move in a different direction. You have your own vision and goals. B is, what is the behavioral change you need to make in order to get to that new vision, that new goal, and make the change happen. And the C is actually coming down to the choice. And you are the only one who can choose to make the change. And then the
Correct.
D is for decision, and that is, what are the different types of supports that you need, what other resources, what other people do you need to put into your life that are going to help you stay on this path towards your new change. And your concept is that, we are not, if we have any of these problems, we're not paying attention to our energy, and that's where we can begin to start making changes. We can make choices to replenish our energy, to listen to our body, to slow ourselves down, to give ourselves love, to not to seek approval from ourselves, to be okay with the progress that we've made.
Right.
Um, and those are the things that we can choose to do, and we can create support systems around those choices.
Right, and it's energetic. So as we make those changes within ourselves, we will call in a different energy to our life. And so it's we don't need to change people.
No.
We need to release who we're not, because we're not the generational experience that we see our life through. So our work really doesn't tell you who you are, it tells you who you're not. And so
Yes.
when you have clarity as to who you're not, then you can begin to develop who you are with power, with purpose, with, like I said, that purpose of loving self and recognizing you're worth loving, of choosing every word and recognize that every word has power, and the words we choose dictate the life we live. And if we're going to change our life, we change our words. If we change our words, we change our thoughts, and then we transform our life. So yes, it's all of those things that you mentioned so very well, and it's just so important that people do have clarity that so many people are just struggling with that parental dynamic of being enough for them, and as a result of not feeling enough for them, they go out into their life and nothing's ever good enough for them. If it's not good enough for their parents, it's not good enough. And to me, wow, that's a misdirection. And we want to release the chain that binds us, and we want to replace that chain with a new vision, a new direction, a new point of power within self. And when we do that, our life will transform, our spine will transform. And that's an extremely exciting thing, because people say, well, what good is it if you have a curve? What can you do about it? Well, the reality of that is that through simple wall adjustments, here I'm demonstrating a wall adjustment that I would do with anyone who's having knee or elbow pain. This example would be a wall adjustment for the lower back region. And then this would show a very severe curvature pattern. The most backward point should be in the middle back area. And in this example, the most backward point's at the last lumbar vertebra, which means this person's going to go into hip replacement and knee replacement as a result of the curvature not being present above. And so, but then we're looking at the same patient 4 months later, showing how the body transformed and now how efficient and normal that spine looks. And that's really the power of the work we do, not just understanding we have a challenge to begin with, but what are the tools to change that? What are the behaviors to change that? And really, what new models can we incorporate that can help transform our life into a place of inner power and a strong, deep-rooted purpose?
So I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of my final questions was, are there things that we can do to improve the stress on our spinal cord and our
yes.
And can we go from having a left, a right, a forward, or a back to a more straight posture?
Yes, and we see it all the time in comparative x-rays. The minute you release the unreal expectation, oh, this person's got to love me or whatever, the minute we release that, the curve changes and the energy changes. But simple things like, as I said, not dropping your head is so powerful for changing your health in your life. Looking at expectation and saying, okay, what's the unreal expectation? Unreal expectation, we hear it all the time. Oh, I'll be happy when I have my new car, my new relationship, my new house, $1 million in the bank. But in true reality, if I'm not enough without those things, when I attain those things, I won't be enough either.
Still won't be enough, yeah.
Right, because the root is generational inadequacy in that concept. So it's really powerful.
I am so intrigued by this whole concept, and this has been so informative, and it's been such a pleasure talking with you. I have so many more questions, so I definitely would like to invite you back onto the show at a future time. But how can listeners get in touch with you?
Well, my website is chiroman.com, and I am located at 6530 East Spring Street in Long Beach. And I just realized that I have a slide that shows that. And so here's my address and phone number, and my website is chiroman.com. And then just one moment to just say that we have designed a product line called Power of Positive Computing. And Power of Positive Computing is we take health affirmations, we take powerful quotes, we merge them with beauty, and then every time you leave your computer, you get the powerful quotes or the wisdom that you need from the amazing coaches throughout our time. And so I have a line, I have a women in history line, I have a black history line, I have a Native American line, I have a Bible scripture line, a health affirmation line, a relationship affirmation line. So, and they all are beautiful pictures with powerful quotes. And so I just wanted to bring that up because it is really a powerful thing to, we all need help and we all need coaches. And this slide is a slide of Harriet Tubman's quote from my Women in History product. Every great dream begins with a dreamer. And I love that quote, and I love this picture. And all these pictures were taken from my photographers that went around the world to shoot these shots. So it's really a powerful product. It's inexpensive. And it's a tool that can transform our mind. And by transforming our mind, we transform our spine, our energy, our health, and our life.
And I absolutely enjoy mine. I've uploaded them onto my computer, and you're right. When you turn them on, you get, because mine is the screensaver. Right. And each time my screen goes black, I get one of these great images that comes up. And it's just always perfect timing and has the right quote that touches me at the right moment.
Yes. Bringing the world together, because that was the point of Power of Positive Computing, was we're all part of one race, the human race, and let's all come together in kindness and show mercy and maintain humility whenever we can.
So thank you so much, Dr. Stephen Ward, for being a guest on Change is Personal. I really enjoyed this time with you and learning so much more about the relationship between our emotions, our spine, our health, and just our outlook on life.
Well, thank you, Kim. It was a true blessing, and I really just enjoy you, and I just think you're an amazing woman and doing amazing things.
Thank you so much for that.
You're
so you have been tuned to Change is Personal on the Amazing Women of Power radio network, powered by Raven International. Change is Personal is where you can learn how to go from feeling overwhelmed to empowered. Thank you so much for listening.